Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to be talking just briefly about nonverbal communication. I'd like to begin by talking a little bit about the differences between verbal and nonverbal. And nonverbal communication includes all different kinds of communication. It's really intentional or unintentional, and it's a transmission of meaning through an individual's non-spoken, physical, or behavioral cues. And really, the theme of this larger chapter is emphasizing the importance of managing our nonverbal communication, because even the smallest nonverbal sort of message can dramatically influence the meaning of the message that you're trying to portray. So it's really, really important to be self-reflexive. A lot of what your chapter talks about is pretty self-explanatory, but I wanted to spend just a little time talking about nonverbal differences from verbal communication, and then going over some of the different nonverbal cues that we've identified in the field of communication that are really important. Nonverbal differences is that nonverbal communication tends to use more channels, it's more ambiguous, it has fewer rules, although there's certainly norms and rules attached to nonverbal communication. The biggest one that we tend to notice all the time is when people stand too close to us. We're like, you're breaking a rule here. And certainly there are norms, but there's fewer rules than there are governing language. It also has more meaning, and that's a difficult one because certainly there's a lot of meaning in language, but what your textbook is trying to say here is that if I say something to you with a really, really nasty look on my face, that's going to carry more meaning than the words coming out of my mouth, even if those words are very, very nice, pleasant words. We're going to take the meaning associated with the nonverbal more seriously than the verbal. It's also influenced by gender culture. It's also very much influenced by technology. And it really, the major thing to remember is that nonverbal and verbal cues combine to make messages. So some of the major nonverbal cues are kinesthetics, vocalics, haptics, proxemics, chronomics, chronemics, excuse me, that one always gets me, physical appearance, artifacts, and environment. And so these various codes that we call them have really important implications for our communication. So when we communicate through the body, we have facial expression, eye contact, gestures, and then there's some specific gestures you'll want to pay attention to in your book to distinguish the differences between them. Emblems, illustrators, regulators, and adapters. And those are really, really important ways that we communicate through the body. Then there's immediacy, and that's really the degree to which we find someone interesting and attractive, and it's dramatically influenced by posture. One can communicate interest in another person through posture as well. So that's really, really important in terms of how we communicate through the body. Communicating through the voice, tone, pitch, loudness, speech rate, all of those things are very important to the creation of meaning. Communicating through touch, there's 6 types of touch. We have functional, professional, social, polite, friendship, warmth, love, intimacy, sexual arousal, and aggressive, hostile. So those are pretty self-explanatory, but those are really important. How we communicate with a handshake, which is functional, professional, and social, polite, depending on how you categorize it, is going to be a really, really important way that we sort of say, hey, this is who I am. We can tell a lot about a person by that way that they shake our hand. We also communicate, as I mentioned before, through personal space. So intimate space is 0 to 18 inches. Personal space is 18 inches to 4 feet. Social space is 4 to 12 feet. Public space is upwards of 12 feet. And really, these various sort of rules that we have about space are very, very important to how we communicate with each other, and also how we sort of express ourselves. We communicate through time. There's two different orientations towards time. One is P time and the other is M time. And M time people really, really value scheduling and management, whereas P time people don't view time as something that can be wasted. They are much looser about how they view time and clocks, and they will be late to things because they just don't view time the same way as their P time people. We also communicate a lot through our personal appearance. This is pretty self-explanatory, but it's really, really important. The clothes that we choose to wear, how we choose to move through a particular space. Are we a quick walker or a slow walker? Do we swing our hands? Do we sit with our legs open, or do we cross them? Are really, really important ways that we communicate who we are, and also with other people. We communicate through objects, the cars we drive. I just recently bought a new car, and I had to say to myself, what kind of car best defines me as a person? And I decided Subaru. So I'm a total cliche in Colorado here. But that's a really, really important way that we communicate, is through the objects that we surround ourselves with. And we also communicate through our environment. Our environment shapes us, it manages our communication, it implies certain things about us, and oftentimes these everyday places communicate so much about us without us even realizing it. So look around your personal space. What does that communicate about who you are? And also, if you're in a space right now where you don't have any control over how it is managed or decorated or structured, think about what the space is asking you to do. Obviously, there's a lot of different things that nonverbal communication does. It helps us convey meaning, emotion, present ourselves, manage our interactions, and really define relationships. And the other thing that the book doesn't talk a whole lot about is the role of visual communication in our personal communication. That's also a really, really important part of how we communicate. And how we look at things and how we engage other people through sight. And certainly in our day and age, images are a really, really important part of how we communicate. Just look at your Facebook page, and a lot of that is going to be images. So that's a really important part of how we manage and communicate our relationships and who we are as well. So that's it for nonverbal communication, and I will see you next time.